I want to start with a very specific image today. It's honestly a bit of a nightmare scenario, but I think almost everyone listening has been there at some point.
Oh, I'm sure they have.
Right. So you've got this massive stack of textbooks on your desk.
Yeah.
You've watched, I don't know, maybe 50 hours of YouTube grammar tutorials.
You got the apps.
You got all the apps. You've highlighted your vocabulary lists until the paper is like basically soaking wet with neon ink. You feel ready? You feel totally prepared?
On paper, you are an absolute expert.
Exactly. But then reality hits. You're in a meeting, or maybe you're just traveling and trying to ask someone for simple directions to the train station. You open your mouth.
And it's just static.
It's static. The freeze, the words are completely locked in your throat. All those grammar rules you spent weeks memorizing just evaporate.
Yeah.
And it is so incredibly frustrating because you put in the time, you did the work.
Yeah, you feel like you did everything right.
So why does it feel like you completely wasted all that effort?
Well, that feeling of wasted effort is exactly what we are tackling today.
Which is why we're doing a deep dive into this incredibly practical guide. It's titled Effective Strategies to Learn English Without Wasting Effort.
And I think the reason this specific guide hits so hard is that it argues the core problem isn't your intelligence, it's not your memory, and it's definitely not your, talent for languages.
Right.
It's your metaphors.
Our metaphors. What does that actually mean?
Well, the source argues that most of us fail because we approach English like we're students sitting in a lecture hall trying to just memorize facts, dates, and rules.
Like a history test.
Exactly like a history test.
Yeah.
But the research suggests we need a complete paradigm shift. We need to stop thinking like students and start thinking like athletes.
Okay, I really like that. Moving from studying to training. But, is that just a semantic trick? Or is there a real functional difference there?
It's a fundamental difference in how the brain actually acquires the skill. Think about it this way. You can read a book about tennis mechanics for 10 years.
Yeah.
You can memorize the physics of a serve. You can read the biography of Roger Federer. But if you never step onto the actual court and swing a racket, you are not a tennis player.
That makes total sense. You can't really multiple choice your way through a live conversation.
Precisely. Language is a physical performance skill, not just an intellectual one. So our mission today is to completely unpack this athlete's toolkit.
Right. We're going to break down why the traditional read and memorize method creates that freeze response we talked about.
And we're going to walk through the specific tactical drills, both mental and physical, that can actually move the needle for you.
We're talking about massive psychological shifts, like how to finally kill the I have no time excuse, which I know is a huge one for all of us.
But it's the biggest one.
And we'll get into specific techniques like active rephrasing that honestly actually hurt a little bit to do simply because they work so well.
And just to set the stage here, the source material explicitly mentions that research compares effective language learning more to sports training than to a classroom environment.
Which means it requires focus, right? Focus, repetition, and consistency, not just passively consuming information.
Exactly. So let's start with the biggest barrier. The first hurdle the source identifies is the one I think we literally all use as a shield.
I just don't have time.
Right, I'm too busy. But the source is pretty aggressive here. It says time isn't usually the real problem, focus is.
It calls it the distraction trap, doesn't it?
It does, and this is fascinating because it completely challenges our definition of what studying actually looks like. Be honest, if you're sitting there with your English book open, but you're also refreshing your email and maybe checking Instagram, half watching the news.
Or what are you actually doing?
Exactly, what are you doing?
I would call that multitasking, which, makes me feel very productive, like I'm hacking my schedule.
Right, but it creates a completely false sense of productivity. You spend an hour doing that and you tell yourself, hey, I studied English for an hour today.
But I didn't.
Biologically, neurologically, your brain was only deeply engaged with the language for maybe 10 fragmented minutes.
Because every single time I switch from the textbook to Instagram, there's a switching cost. My brain has to totally reboot.
Exactly. Divided attention kills proficiency. The source is very firm on this point. Studying while distracted is essentially useless.
Wow. Useless.
It argues that it's actually better to not study at all than to study with half a brain, because you're basically building a habit of low-intensity performance. You're training yourself to be distracted while using English.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate here for a second. People are genuinely busy.
Sure.
We have demanding jobs, we have kids, long commutes. It's super easy for an expert to say, just focus. But how do we fix this no-time fallacy without, quitting our jobs.
Well, the source suggests a psychological reframe first. It sounds incredibly simple, but it carries a lot of weight. You have to stop saying, I have no time.
You'd say what instead?
You start practicing the phrase, I choose to make time.
Oof. That puts the responsibility right back on my shoulders.
It really does.
Because I have no time makes me a victim of my calendar. I choose to make time makes me the owner.
It's entirely about agency. And once you take ownership of that, you change how you use the time you do have. The source uses a visual analogy here that I absolutely love.
The blinders.
The blinders, yes.
Yeah.
When a thoroughbred racehorse is on the track, they wear blinders specifically so they cannot see the horses to their left or their right.
They can only see the finish line.
Right. The source argues that your learning sessions need blinders. You need to block out all the side paths completely.
So practically speaking, this isn't really about finding more hours in the day. It's about increasing the density of the hours you already have.
Density is the perfect word for it. The source advocates for what it calls the 30-minute standard.
Okay, what's that?
It argues that 30 minutes of intense, blinder-wearing, phone-in-the-other-room focus is infinitely better than 4 hours of open book while watching Netflix time.
See, that feels so much more manageable to me. 30 minutes. Everyone has 30 minutes somewhere.
Right.
You can find that on your lunch break or maybe just before the kids wake up in the morning.
Exactly. And to actually make it stick, the source suggests using a physical timer tool. You set it for exactly 30 minutes, and for that specific window, English is your key task.
It's non-negotiable.
Completely non-negotiable. It's not a leisure activity you just get to. If you have some energy left over at night, it's an appointment.
Right, it's like a dentist appointment or a one-on-one meeting with your boss. You wouldn't sit there and scroll through TikTok during a meeting with your boss. Well, hopefully not.
Hopefully.
So you shouldn't do it during your 30 minutes of English training either.
It goes right back to the athlete analogy. A sprinter doesn't jog for 6 hours. They sprint for a few seconds at maximum physical effort.
Because that intensity triggers the adaptation in the muscles.
Yes. And we want to trigger that exact same adaptation in the brain.
Okay, so we've carved out the time. We've got our blinders firmly on. We are ready to sprint. But now we actually need to know what we're aiming for. And this is where the source attacks one of my least favorite words in language learning.
Let me guess. The F word.
The F word. Fluency.
Yep.
The source basically says that setting a goal, like I want to be fluent, is the absolute most efficient way to ensure you quit. But why is that? Isn't fluency the whole point?
The problem is that fluency is a mirage. It's like a horizon line. You keep walking toward it, but it just keeps moving further away.
Because it's so subjective.
Exactly. What does it actually mean? Does it mean you can recite Shakespeare from memory? Does it mean you can negotiate a complex corporate trade deal? Or does it just mean you can order a beer without pointing at the menu?
Right. And because it's completely undefined, you never actually get the dopamine hit of achieving it.
No, you don't.
You always feel like you're failing because there is always going to be a word you don't know.
Exactly. Vague aims lead to vague results. The source provides a really clear distinction between a bad goal and a good goal here.
Okay, let's hear it.
A bad goal is learn English. A good goal, a measurable target is hold a basic conversation about my job in 3 months.
Hold a basic conversation about my job. See, that is incredibly concrete. You know exactly when you've crossed that finish line.
And it gives you real direction. If your goal is to talk about your work in marketing or IT, you do not need to learn vocabulary about zoo animals or medieval history right now.
It acts as a filter.
A perfect filter. You stop wasting effort on things that do not help you hit that specific target.
This connects perfectly to the imagery the source uses about climbing a hill. If you just stand at the bottom and look at the peak of the mountain, quote-unquote, fluency, you just get vertigo.
You get totally overwhelmed by how far you have to go.
So the source suggests looking at the hill climb, just one step at a time, breaking huge, scary goals into tiny weekly focuses.
Yes.
Can you give us an example of what a tiny weekly focus actually looks like in practice?
Sure. So instead of trying to improve vocabulary, which is an endless, impossible task, you spend one entire week specifically mastering vocabulary related to family.
Just family.
That's it. For 7 straight days, you drill father, mother, cousin, marriage, relationship dynamics. And by the end of the week, you have a definitive win.
And that check mark matters, doesn't it? Psychologically.
Hugely. The source talks a lot about the dopamine loop here. We need to actively track these small wins to keep the brain interested in the process.
Because if you wait until you're fluent to celebrate, you'll be waiting for years.
Exactly. But if you celebrate mastering family vocab this week and maybe restaurant ordering next week, you stay highly motivated.
It's a gamification of learning. Even literally treating yourself after completing a lesson series. We aren't robots. We need a carrot on the stick.
Absolutely. Positive reinforcement works for training dogs, and it absolutely works for training humans.
But let's play the realist for a second.
Oh.
Because even with these great small goals, language learning just takes a really long time.
It does.
And I think a lot of listeners get super discouraged when they don't sound like a native speaker after using an app for a month.
That is the reality check.
Yeah.
And the source pulls absolutely no punches here. This is where we get into the marathon mindset.
Right. The source throws out a number here that honestly stopped me in my tracks. 200 hours.
Yes, 200 hours.
Just to move from an intermediate level to an advanced level.
Specifically, 200 hours of focused study, not passive listening.
When I first read that, I thought, wow, that is incredibly daunting. That's basically 5 straight weeks of a full-time job. But then I realized it's actually sort of liberating.
How so?
Well, if I've only put in 20 hours of focused study, of course I'm not advanced yet. It's not that I'm stupid or untalented. It's just that I literally haven't done the math yet.
Precisely. It prevents the profound disappointment of that quick fix marketing.
Oh, the fluent in 30 days. Ads.
Right. The source is saying, no, look at the actual data. It's a long haul. It requires real endurance over months and months.
So if we are looking at a 200-hour journey, how do we actively avoid burnout? Because 200 hours of rote grammar drills sounds like literal torture. I would quit at hour 15.
It is torture. And that is exactly why the source emphasizes what it calls sustainable materials. This is crucial. If you are going to spend 200 hours with a language, you would better enjoy the content you're consuming.
The example they gave in the text was great. If you like cooking, listen to cooking podcasts.
Right. Do not listen to a boring, scripted textbook dialogue about buying a train ticket if you do not care about trains.
Yeah, nobody cares about those dialogues.
Exactly. If you love cooking, listen to a real chef explaining a recipe in English. The underlying logic here is you aren't studying English, you are learning about cooking in English.
That is such a crucial distinction. It takes all the pressure off the language itself and puts the focus entirely on the content. It turns English into a tool rather than a test subject.
And it builds that persistence we need. You are way more likely to show up for your 30-minute session if you're actually eager to hear the end of a story or learn a new recipe. You're hacking your own interests.
Okay, so we've got the mindset down. We're choosing to make time. We've got the goals, measurable milestones, no more fluency mirage. We've accepted the marathon of 200 hours. Now let's get into the real nitty-gritty, the technical execution.
Strategy 5.
Yes, strategy 5 in the text. Active practice.
This is where the rubber meets the road. This is the difference between reading that tennis book and actually swinging the racket.
The source makes a huge deal about active versus passive learning. We touched on this earlier, but can you define that really clearly for the listener? What makes an activity truly active?
Think of it like this. Passive is simply input. Reading, listening, watching a video. The information is coming in.
Okay.
Active is output. Speaking, writing, translating in real time. The information is being forced out of your brain. The source argues you literally cannot learn to speak just by listening. You have to produce.
And there's a specific exercise they recommend for this called the rephrase technique. Walk us through that, because when I read it, it sounded intense.
It is intense. Okay, so normally, let's say you read a sentence in a book like, the story was about a trip. You understand it, you nod, you move on to the next sentence. That's passive.
Right. Very easy.
The rephrase technique requires you to stop, look up from the text, and immediately force yourself to say that exact same idea in completely different words out loud.
So I see the story was about a trip, and I'd have to look away and say, it described a journey to new places.
Exactly. You are forcing your brain to access synonyms, to build new grammar structures, and to formulate a sentence in real time. You are producing language, not just acknowledging it.
I'm not going to lie, that sounds really annoying and much, much harder.
Oh, it's way harder. But that is exactly why it works. It's the difference between watching someone else lift weights and actually lifting them yourself. The strain is where the growth happens.
So if it feels easy, you probably aren't learning much.
Exactly. That feeling of mental strain, that slight frustration, that's the actual feeling of proficiency building in your brain.
That's a great heuristic. If it's easy, I'm just coasting.
Yeah.
Now, what if you don't have a partner to practice output with? Because a lot of people say, I can't practice speaking because I have no one to talk to,
The source has a brilliant solution for that, too. The mirror method.
which is exactly what it sounds like.
Yes, you stand in front of a mirror and you talk to yourself. Or you use self-talk apps to simulate a real conversation.
I feel like I would feel incredibly silly doing that in my bedroom.
You will. You'll feel totally ridiculous at first. But here is the thing. Your brain honestly doesn't know the difference in terms of muscle memory.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You are physically training your mouth to form the specific shapes of the English words. You're bridging the neurological gap between thinking the word and actually saying the word out loud.
It goes right back to the athlete analogy again. Think about boxers. Boxers shadow box all the time.
Yeah.
They stand in the ring and punch the air. They don't always need a live opponent to train their form and their reflexes.
That is a perfect analogy. You are shadow boxing with English. It physically prepares you for the real fight, the actual conversation.
That's amazing. Now, there's one more technical piece in the source. They call it the bonus strategy. And this one directly addresses the leaky bucket problem.
The leaky buckets.
Right. You learn a great new word on Tuesday, and by Friday, it's just completely gone.
Yeah, the forgetting curve. It's a completely natural human phenomenon. Our brains are actually designed to delete information we don't use regularly. It's an efficiency feature. It's not a bug.
But for language learning, it's a total disaster.
It is. So how do we stop the brain from hitting the delete button?
The source introduces spaced repetition as the antidote.
Yes.
For those who maybe haven't heard that term before, can you break it down simply?
Spaced repetition is basically a way of hacking your memory. Instead of studying a vocabulary word 20 times in one single day and then never looking at it again.
Like cramming for a test.
Right, which doesn't stick. Instead, you study it once today, once tomorrow, once in 3 days, and then maybe once next week. You space out the exposure.
What's the specific schedule the source recommends for a beginner?
They suggest a very simple rhythm to start. Review your notes the exact same day you take them, and then review them again 2 days later.
But we aren't just rereading those notes, right? Because we already established that rereading is passive.
Correct. You have to combine that spaced repetition with the active practice we just talked about. Don't just reread your list of words.
So what do I do?
Take a phrase you learn, like, I enjoy reading books, and literally force yourself to use it in a new sentence, like, I enjoy watching movies on the weekend.
Okay, so you're actively manipulating the data, not just staring at it on the page.
Exactly. You're building flexibility. And the source adds another great layer to this, connecting topics.
How does that work?
If you just spent your 30 minutes learning food vocabulary, immediately go watch a YouTube video about street food.
Yeah.
Try to actively spot the words you just learned out in the wild.
Oh, I love that. That moment of recognition when you hear a native speaker use the word you learned an hour ago, it's such a rush.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it biologically validates the study session. It proves to your brain that this new information is actually useful in the real world, so your brain files it under keep instead of delete.
So let's zoom out a bit as we wrap up. What does all this really mean for you, the listener, right now? We've covered a ton of ground today, from the psychology of racehorse blinders to the mechanics of shadowboxing in the mirror.
I think the single biggest takeaway is that identity shift we started with.
Right.
You are no longer a student hoping to just magically absorb English by osmosis. You are an athlete. You are training a physical and mental skill.
And that, like any serious athlete, you don't need more time. You need focused time.
Yes. You don't need fluency. You need measurable milestones. And you need to fully accept that the process is going to be messy.
Now, the source does acknowledge that this isn't easy. There are going to be major obstacles. Your motivation will dip.
It's inevitable.
There will definitely be days you just do not want to set that 30-minute timer.
They absolutely acknowledge that. And for those tough days, the source suggests journaling your why. When you're exhausted and that 30-minute timer goes off, you need to vividly remember why you were putting yourself through this.
Is it for a better paying job?
Right. Is it to travel the world without fear? Is it to finally have a deep conversation with a family member? Write that specific reason down.
Because when the willpower naturally runs out, you need a deep emotional reason to keep pushing.
And just remember the core philosophy of the whole guide. Consistency over perfection.
Yes.
A messy, stumbling, incredibly difficult 30-minute session done every single day is infinitely better than a perfect, color-coded 4-hour session done once a month.
Consistency really is the compound interest of learning.
Ex-
Well, before we officially sign off, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Right.
We've been talking all day about this athlete mindset, right? about intensity and focus.
Right.
So here is the question you need to ask yourself. If you treated your language learning with the exact same intensity and focus as a high-stakes, sweaty gym workout where you are locked in, focused, and actually pushing your limits, how much faster would you see results?
That's the real question.
But most of us treat English like a leisurely stroll in the park. What actually happens if you start treating it like a sprint?
That is the ultimate game changer.
Something to really think about the next time you're tempted to just passively highlight a textbook. Thanks for diving in with us today.
See you next time.